Welcome to the Superpower Her podcast. I'm your host, Dia Direct, and today we are talking about healing from the inside out. I'm so excited to be talking to Dr. Dominique Dor. And when I tell you that she is going to break down what's happening to us from the inside out psychologically and how that has a direct impact on what's going on with us physically, it's mind blowing. And when I heard her story, I also heard my own story. And my hope and prayer for today is that you find something in this conversation that helps you go, now I understand what's going on with me. And then we can get to the solutions. Hey, y'all, it's your girl, Dia Direct. Welcome back to the Superpower Podcast. Hey there, Dr. Dor. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a privilege to be here. I was able to listen to a few of the podcasts, and I am very thankful for the invitation. Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
You know, when I looked at your background and listened to your story around healing, psychotherapy, it was so fascinating. There were some key elements that really hit home for me, but we kind of just go directly there. Just tell me a little bit about what you do, what your philosophy and approach is,
Mm-hmm.
and what your ultimate goal is from a holistic perspective.
Sure, absolutely. So, as you know, my name is Dr. Dor, and I am a psychotherapist. I specialize in trauma, PTSD, recovery. So, in essence, what I do is I teach people life skills to get through trauma and PTSD. And so, one of the things in the field that I'm in, we often joke about the reason why we get into the field is to fix ourselves first. And so that is precisely what I think happened to me. As I went through school, I was introduced to the adverse childhood experiences, which is a study that was done by Vincent Folletti. Vincent Folletti studied the ACEs, and his method was he looked at the area, 10 different areas, and according to him, if you scored four or more on, with the ACEs, you are four times more likely to use drugs. You're 15 times more likely to engage in suicide. You are three times more likely to have an early death. I mean, it was a combination of things that if you score four or more on the ACEs, that you can wait for it, it's going to happen to you. So as a result of that, I realized that, hey, you know what? I really need to look at myself. I need to look at what's been going on with me. Not everything is okay.
What did you discover about yourself in this process of learning?
So in during the process of learning, so growing up, I realized that some things were not okay. But sometimes we can normalize trauma so much, or that we live in communities where trauma is normalized to where it feels okay. It feels okay until you start stepping outside of your community. Um, if I was going to define trauma, trauma is not simply the thing that happens to you. I believe trauma is also how it shows up after the event happens. Um, I've worked, I often say there's the global trauma and also the private trauma. The global traumas are easier to deal with. I was a part of I went to work the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. And I've also worked disasters such as Katrina's and all the others afterward. The one thing I noticed was that when people are healing in community, it makes the traumatic experiences so much more tolerable. Not easy, but tolerable. So those are the global traumas. 9/11 would have been a global trauma that we all endured together. So it's easy. It's not easier. It's more tolerable when more people are talking about it. The private traumas that we go through, such as a divorce or sexual abuse, it's the fact that we're not able to talk about it, and I think that's what really keeps us in that loop of re-injuring ourselves and over again. When we go through the process of something happens to us and there's no one to talk to about it. Over the years, what I had to do, I had to get to the point where I needed to look at myself and decided, am I going to remain the same person? When you are around other individuals who treat your trauma as normal, it keeps you sick. And the way you respond to life circumstances also is not healthy. There are three conditions to trauma. Trauma shows up in our bodies, trauma shows up in our brain, and the next place that trauma will show up are in your relationships. Now, I know there's a lot of single individuals out there, and a lot of individuals want to remain single. But the one place that you're going to realize what you're made up of is when you allow yourself to be in a relationship. Relationship mirrors for you who you really are. Now, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about relationship with siblings, friends, colleagues, even female relationship. All of these relationships will mirror for you the areas that especially with me, that when I was single, I was perfect because there was nobody to tell me otherwise. And then I take this test from Vincent Folletti, this assessment, and I'm a perfect 10 all over again, but in a different way. Right. And so I realized, okay, I know I always wanted to be a psychotherapist. Unfortunately, I didn't have the finances to go to become a psychotherapist. So I knew I was going to end up there, but my undergrad, unfortunately, is in finance. I shouldn't say unfortunately; it was a good thing. I love the finance field. Is in finance, so that really helped to help me get the money that I needed to go ahead and continue my education, which is fantastic. So as I go through the studying of psychotherapy, I realized the first person I needed to heal was myself. And in the process of healing myself, I discovered techniques, tools, different ways and different avenues to not only help myself but help my clients. One of the things that I came across was realizing that there are 8 areas, there's 8 dimensions of life that are crucial if I was going to make it in this world. If I was going to beat the odds, if I was going to beat the statistics, if I was not going to end up in jail according to some of these statistics, then I needed to look at these 8 dimensions of life and figure out and learn more about them, and then create tools to help me go from an ACEs of 10 to something more manageable. And that's what I did. And I did that to a program called I Profess. I believe in professing things, and you can tell I have a faith background, right? So I believe in professing things. And so the I Profess method is where you look at yourself, you look at your intellectual self, and you say, okay, where am I lacking? And you create tools and skills around that. So that's where the life skills training comes from. You look at the your physical self, because in our community, sometimes we're not trained how to take care of ourselves physically. And so I had to figure out how to eat well, how to exercise was not a bad thing. I've been wearing braids forever for that reason, because I realized, hey, it's good to sweat. That's a good thing. So physically, I had to create tools to get through the physical hang up that I have. Relationally, occupationally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. Because one of the things trauma does to us, it forces us to self isolate. Yeah. And so when we isolate ourselves, we are not we tend to be what people will call antisocial sometimes, and it's not really so. It's really that it's a self-protecting mechanism that I've adopted over the years to protect myself, and that's what trauma does. It keeps you isolated. So it was a lot of work to get here.
You said so much that
Hmm.
is relatable.
Hmm.
There's so many nuggets in what you just shared, especially around relationships and
Hmm.
being a mirror to who you are.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's easy to think you recovered from
Hmm.
trauma.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel like when you move away from whatever the thing was, whatever the trauma was, whatever the person was, whatever the situation was, faced with it, we often make the mistake to think we're over it, we're past
Mm.
it, until you that often reflect
Hmm.
yourself back to you and you realize, you know, I'm not as far along in that area as I thought I was.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
got some growth to do.
Yeah.
And it's not until it's challenged, as long as,
Mhm.
to your point, as long as we're isolated, then you will be on this island thinking
Mhm.
that you're healed.
Yeah.
And there are various reasons why we need community, why we need
Mhm.
relationships, why we need touch and connection. But
True.
us, spiritually, it helps us physically, it helps us psychologically.
Mhm.
But we don't often think of it in those terms.
Yeah.
And yes, I do hear the spiritual insight, which I also relate to and appreciate,
Yeah.
because I think we understand now more than ever, even scientifically,
Mhm.
that hope, faith, spirituality are healthy. It's actually good
Absolutely.
for you. It's actually
Mhm.
good for you mentally and emotionally and physically. People live longer and healthier lives when they have hope,
Mhm.
when they have faith. It's proven and shown in science. And so it feels like we're in a time where science and spirituality are catching up to each other.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. And as it should, because we do ourselves an injustice when we don't look at ourselves in the totality. And that's where looking at the eight dimensions that I've discovered. Hey, you know what? If we can get these areas correctly, like the clients that walk into my office, they already know at the beginning of our sessions, we're always going to assess for these areas of life to see how they're managing it. Because if we can manage these areas of life, there's a good chance we're managing life at a good level. Because once you out of balance in one of these areas, you're out of balance. That's why a lot of people who chooses not to go the faith route, and I'm not talking about church, I'm talking about faith connection with spirit, with spiritual, with your spiritual self. When you learn to do that, you don't disconnect yourself from it. You realize life is bigger than than just going to church and whatnot. And even though it is as important, the one thing that you had mentioned was relationship. When it comes to relationship, the first relationship is with yourself. One of the things you realize when you deal with trauma is that you don't even know how to use emotional regulations. Some people are walking around here saying that, oh, I have anger issues, or I have this issue, I have that issues. If you take that whole thing, you can put it into, okay, this person lacks emotional regulation. So that's a coping skills, that's a life skills that they probably left, and they pick up the anger because the anger served them. And I often ask my client, when they're using a skill, I don't quickly take it away from them, because I myself had a bunch of skills that, maladaptive skills that I had to pick up in order to survive in my neck of the hood, or the world. In schools, at work, being a Black female in America, there's a lot of skills that I had to pick up. But over time, I realized, hey, I don't need them anymore. And I'm not that therapist that's going to take a tool away from a person too soon. Yes, I'm going to teach you emotional regulations. I'm also going to teach you how to take what you were using and how to bring it into your today's self. I'm going to teach you things how to set boundaries, because you cannot have decent, healthy relationship, not even with yourself, if you don't respect boundaries. So that's a tools that's a life coping skills that is absolutely necessary in order to move on with life. Simple things, especially for us women, simple things as feeling, saying yes or no, deciding to say yes when you want to say yes, deciding to say no when you want to say no, and not feeling guilty about it. As simple as that is something I had to work on. To other people, they probably roll their eyes. Oh, this is so easy. No, it's not. When you have to look at life through your own traumatic experiences, and you're talking to a woman who has a perfect 10 on that ACE score, she had to do a lot of work to get here. And those are the clients that I sit in front of sometimes, and I realize, and I'm able to empathize with them. I'm very empathetic in the therapy room, simply because I get it. I get you. I understand. And so being able to say no without feeling guilty. Oh, here's another big one. Oh, wow. And I'm still learning that one. Um, Learning to rest, being able to be in a calm environment. I Because perfection is one of the things that you go through when you're having to work through some traumas. I mean, that was my situation. Everything has to be perfect, because you had parents that needed you to be perfect so they can be perfect. So learning to just be in a calm, quiet environment, resting. That was a learned skill for me. It. I remember the first time I discovered, oh my gosh, I had a cluttered environment. I don't know if you recall when that decluttering movement started. Yeah, that decluttering movement started, and I was like, this makes sense to me. And I wanted to go ahead and start decluttering my life ASAP. It took me another 5 to 7 years to finally get through what I felt like was a decent amount of decluttering physically, because the emotional decluttering, that keeps on going. That doesn't stop. It's you always checking in with yourself. You have to always check in with yourself to kind of assess as to, where am I? Another thing I do is, I'm always double checking myself when someone else enters my life. When new people are entering my life, I'm always looking at, first of all, I already have that trauma situation going on. So I'm not as open to just let you in, even though I'm getting better at that. But when a person enters my life, I'm always asking myself, what is it that they're coming to tell me about myself? Because over the years, one of the things I noticed is that every relationship, good or bad, decent or ugly, every individual that I came in contact with, they came to teach me something. And by golly, they were my teachers, and I learned. I always made myself available to learn from other people's life stories. So here I am. Mhm.
I'm loving this. You mentioned decluttering,
Yeah.
and it's proven. It's evidence based that when you have clutter around you, it clutters your mind, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It shifts, it clutters your ability to think clearly or to be
Sure.
creative.
Mhm.
And so it's like unique, but it's really about setting yourself up for success
Mhm.
holistically.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to know, right? And
Mhm.
then it
Absolutely.
changes you. And so I've gone through that same practice of decluttering and
Mhm.
seeing
Mhm.
how it took down um, that adrenaline or that fight or flight
Yep.
um,
Fight,
emotion.
flight.
It made me
Mhm.
calmer.
Yeah.
It made my energy better.
Yeah.
And I felt more restful. I felt more peaceful. And I really
Mhm.
consider it a part of my self-care, right? When you feel good, when
Absolutely.
your environment. That's an
Mhm.
important part of self-care too. We often talk about, going to the spa
Mhm.
and doing, beauty things, but
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
creating a safe space, a beautiful, a relaxing, a
Yeah.
decluttered atmosphere is really healing. And in fact, it's what makes
Absolutely.
you more relatable, more
Mhm.
empathetic,
Mhm.
because you get it, right? You understand
Yeah.
this is a lifelong journey of
Mhm.
healing. And you may not need it in the same ways or in the same area, but there's always going to be areas of growth when you think about how what's going on here and
Mhm.
here
Mhm.
impacts the rest of your body.
Absolutely. Mhm.
You've done a lot of research and writing about that. And as a child who experienced ACEs, when I was checking all those boxes, I was like, yeah, I had those traumatic experiences.
Mhm.
And we think about and talk about gut issues. And I've always wondered why I had gut issues. I'm eating the same things my family and friends are often, but I'm having these challenges. And I
Mhm.
heard a functional doctor once share with me that she could often tell what was going on with a client by what was going on with their body. She could
Mhm.
tell what was going on in many cases with them emotionally show up directly connected to the gut and how
Mhm.
that impacts things. It was mind blowing. For the first time, I was like, she sees me. Somebody's explaining my story. Somebody
Yeah.
is giving
Yeah.
definition to what I've been dealing with most of
Mhm.
my life. Can you
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Yeah. Absolutely. The First of all, let's clarify something. Trauma does not necessarily, it didn't, sometimes it didn't start with you. In my situation, I had an in utero situation going on with my mom. I had to trace my trauma all the way to my grandparents. And then I had to look at the woman who gave birth to me. In utero, trauma is a real thing. My mother was, she had some illnesses going on. So she could not connect with me the way most mothers, especially now. Now we look, women are talking to their kids, they singing to them, doing all these great things. And we know that is very healthy. But if you dealing with an individual that was suffering with illnesses in her own body, it she I'm not saying she was not capable, but it makes it more difficult for her to connect with me. And then on top of that, she passed away way before I was, after I was born, so I never really experienced that motherly connection. So that was another thing that I'm coming into this world with. So in utero trauma is a real thing. That's why now I encourage pregnant women that, hey, the child can hear you, they can feel you, they can feel your emotions. So when we're dealing with domestic violence, women that are going through all different traumatic experiences in relationships, the child experiences all of that. So when I say things like trauma did not start with you, sometimes you have to trace your trauma all the way back through the ancestors, and particularly your home of origin, to kind of see what are some of the things you're walking out here with. So To answer your question, absolutely yes. There's a lot of illnesses. I mean, for some reason, we think it's okay. We think it's okay to walk out with all the different illnesses that are in our community. It's and we attribute these to aging or old age, and then you look at some of the other individuals, some of the other cultures that are living great and wonderful lives, and some of their traumas are not different from us, but they have more community. It's amazing. I've looked at kids that are in dire poverty, and they are happier than some of the kids that are getting 3 4 meals a day, simply because the community they are being raised in. So when we talk about trauma showing up in our bodies, absolutely, we have a vagus nerve that connects from the tip of our head to the bottom of our feet. It contributes to our entire body, and everything, all the organs are connected. So for that reason, when we are saying, hey, I'm not feeling well, the vagus nerves is kicking in. We now know through research that you can tame the vagus nerves. You don't have to keep living in a hyper vigilant state. You can learn to calm yourself, so that way you're not producing a lot of toxins in your body. And when you continue to produce toxin in your body, the organs, the major organs and the minor organs, are paying the price. So 5, 10, 20 years removed, I often call it the pressure cooker. 5, 10, 20 years removed, now you're dealing with some chronic illnesses and you don't know where it came from. Of course, a lot of times we're like, oh, it's genetic, it's genetic. And of course, that's true too. But before we jump to that, let's do the work to see, okay, how much of that was from my home of origin? How much of that was from the different institutions that I was a part of? How much of that, how much of that did I really clean up before I got here? Because the cleanup work is so important, even to the point where we now have a theory, the polyvagal theory, where they are looking at the vagus nerves and they're trying to see, okay, what is the connection? And there's a real connection between your gut, your body, your mind. Everything is connected. It's hard to believe. Many years ago, we were not. We were uh, treating the body separate and apart from the mind. I mean, one look of how that vagus nerve is connected lets you know that, hey, everything is connected. You cannot ignore the body, you cannot ignore the mind. You got to keep those things together. What is interesting for me is when I'm sitting in front of someone and they're talking about, I have IBS, I have this, I have somatic, and it is somatic experiences, and they cannot pinpoint. They've tried everything and they cannot pinpoint. And I will put a ACE assessment in front of them, and they will score a 7 or 8. And I'm thinking, well, that may be part of it. Trauma may be part of it. Let's not ignore the fact that, hey, you may be carrying things inside of you that needs to be purged out, or at the very least, I may be able to teach you some life skills to make you realize that you don't have to sit in that pressure cooker day in and day out. You definitely can do something about it. You definitely can learn how to turn this thing around before it's too late. Yeah, we might have already done some damages, but you know what? I always live life from this day forward. And when you live life from this day forward, whatever knowledge you have, you bring it into you bring it into your internal self, and you use it, and you use it to better your life. The other part is use it to better your community, use it to better your inner circles. Because if I'm better, the 5 or 6 people that I rub shoulders with, they're already better. And so that's what that is. So absolutely, the body, the connection between the gut, Now we have a process where we even have cute name for it, like leaky guts. I even wrote in my blog, in the blog that I have, I even wrote a blog about the leaky gut, just to assist individuals on how, yeah, now we're finding cute name for illnesses, but what we really need to do is figure out how to get around that and use learning how to eat right. Don't ignore things like exercising, learning to keep promises to yourself. If you say, hey, I'm going to work 5,000 steps every day, to me, that's a legitimate promise to yourself. But if we continue to keep breaking promises to ourselves, after a while, even your body doesn't believe you anymore. Your body knows that, hey, yeah, that's just one more goal Dominique is setting. You know, give it a minute. That too will pass. She's not going to keep up with that. But if you get into the position where you start, I always say, start with baby steps. Start learning how to keep promises to yourself first. If you say you're going to walk 500 steps per day, by golly, before you put your head on that bed, look at that watch in your hand or those fancy phones you have and see if you've met the 500. If you did not, put on a music, start dancing, and 500 steps goes this fast. Those are practical life skills. Another thing is making the decision that I'm gonna change my diet. Okay. But for most people, that usually involves, hey, I'm going to go to the supermarket. I'm going to spend $500, blah, 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 and all that. For my clients, it's as simple as, what about removing one thing? What about adding one thing? There's 52 weeks in the year. If I can get you to do 52 things right, guess what? Next year, it's a different year. It's a different year. And that's the whole I profess process that I teach my clients so they can stop feeling stuck, because that's usually when they walk into my office. It's that sense of, I'm not feeling well, I feel stuck, life is not working for me, what should I do? And that's where we usually start.
I don't think I really connected with it until this point in my life. Like everything
Yeah.
is really connected. Hello, hello.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely.
What would you say your superpower is, Dr. Dor?
The number one superpower I think I have is I am really judgment free. I am, I do not judge. I don't judge people. Anybody, I can work with just about anybody who will let me. And I create a judgment free environment to where everybody feels welcome, because I know where I'm coming from. And I know I have been judged based on my lack of skills. So for that, I can honestly say that I am judgment free, and with that, I can build and teach people life skills. So yeah, life skills will be the second one. Teaching people how to get over the stuckness of life. Hmm. Yeah.
Ooh, that is so good. Ooh, that's good. But it's something about when you go through things, when you learn about yourself, when you
Hmm.
gain self-awareness, empathetic for others, less judgmental because you know but for the grace of God,
True that.
because you're aware of
Hmm.
your own flaws and areas in need to grow,
Hmm.
that it allows safe space for other people, because I think you learn that you are able to give to people bad,
Hmm.
and it really positions you to be the kind of clinician, leader, friend, spouse, family member that you would
Hmm.
like to have in return.
Yeah.
And you really only learn that through trial and error.
Hmm.
Sometimes you learn it through getting the tools and knowledge in school or spiritually, but sometimes your ability to be what other people need does require pain, challenges,
Yeah.
um, tribulation. And, I always share with my audience that my motto is I've learned to make my pain pay you back. Pay something, you ought to get some interest off of it, right? And
I
that's
love
where I
it.
am in this season of my life. That's what the
Yeah.
superpower her about is teaching women how to how to use it, right? How to
Yeah.
leverage it. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
just go through it, learn from it, make
Mm-hmm.
use it to take you and propel you to the next place. You don't have to be stuck. You don't have to be defined by it, them, that,
Mm-hmm.
then you
Yeah.
can move forward. You got to feel it though before so you can face it.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
before we go, there's just two quick things that I want you to kind of give us some context on because
Mm-hmm.
we are in this social media world where people are throwing a lot of terms around, and we've talked a lot around trauma. Can you define trauma, and can you define triggers? Because people use those words very loosely,
Yeah.
and I just want to, hear from your clinical
Mm-hmm.
perspective and purview what those words
Mm-hmm.
really mean, um, and how they impact us.
Yeah. Simple term, trauma, a negative event. The simplest way to define trauma is it's a negative event that you only recognize that it's negative based on how your body, your mind respond to it. So that would be the quickest way to define trauma. Um, you can go through a negative event, and I talked about this earlier. Um, you can go through a negative event, but when you have a group of people, a group of support system, that's why I think social isolation is so dangerous. Um, I choose sometimes to stay a part of a group, not because of what, not because I even believe in some of this stuff anymore, only because I realize I need them, and that's not easy to say. So when you're looking at trauma and life is gonna keep happening. I have clients who will say life keeps lifing or whatever it is that they're using that slang, but that makes sense because life is gonna continue, and as life continues, your body, your mind, your resiliency has a lot to do with how you're gonna respond to the trauma. I often say, hey, get ready. You don't know when the next blow is gonna come. But when it comes, if you are intellectually ready, physically ready, relationally ready, financially ready, spiritually ready, socially ready, you are ready ahead of the game. You have a process to deal with whatever life has to throw at you if you keep those eight dimension flowing at a level to where something happens to me financially. Hey, you know what? I have financial backup because I have a savings. Something happens to me physically. It's not going to be as bad because guess what? I've been in the gym, I've been working out, I've been preparing for life to happen. So trauma, yeah, it's an event. It's something that's going to happen. Wait for it, it's going to happen. But how we respond to it has a lot to do with the outcome, what will happen. Um, triggers, to answer that question, triggers are things that just when you are least expected, and you said it well when you were speaking earlier, out of nowhere, all of a sudden you think you dealt with something and boom, here it is again. And that's exactly what triggers are. It could be a scent, it could be a look, it could be anything, and that triggers you because it reopened the traumatic experiences. It forces you. Sometimes we could bury a trauma so deep that we think it's done and over with, and then and then you run into someone who reminds you, or you smell something and you are automatically triggered. Trigger is a real thing. There are people that have snapped out of life because of triggers, because we do such a good job sometimes burying trauma until one day we somebody awakens it, and then life says, deal with me. um, if I can take this a little further, uh, life is always going to ask you to deal with it. What's interesting is I've worked in the geriatric department in hospitals. I love working with geriatric department, and I've worked in the geriatric hospital. And one of the things you get to see are people in their later in life who never dealt with things, and you can see based on their behavior that whatever that was buried so nicely, or they use business, or they use childbearing, or they use relationship, we're good at hiding things. Whatever they were burying, when you start getting into a demented stage, when you get to a point where you are dealing with dementia, you're not that good at hiding life anymore. And so the stuff you didn't deal with. So one of the things you see in the psych ward and the psychiatric facilities, I remember one lady, she was walking around with a doll, with a baby doll, and she kept and find out when I read her case study, it was because she had lost a child, and she never really dealt with it. So guess what? She's in the geriatric facility now, and she is caring for that child. Yeah. So it's so there's no getting around it. At some point, you would be the lucky one. You will be the lucky one to get triggered by something you have buried and have time to deal with it.
Leave us with an encouraging word for women in particular who right now are going through significant transition.
Mm-hmm.
This space we're in, culturally, economically,
Mm-hmm.
politically, has a lot of women of color in particular
Mm-hmm.
feeling traumatized by the times. Things that define them, or their relationships, or their status, or their money, are all being challenged. And we probably need therapy now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if you would bless us with encouraging words, specifically who is watching, who feels like her whole world is being turned
Mm-hmm.
around because of the transitions that she's experiencing, embarrassed, angry,
Mm-hmm.
um, all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Um, the one encouraging thing that I would like to say is never stop fighting for your sanity. Always, always put your sanity first. That's all you have. What often happens is that the woman who's going through the transition, she's disconnected from her true self because she sees herself one way and she wants to be another. Sometimes the community, the marriage, the relationship that she's in, she's not able to do so. But I say, when you start the process, finish it. Fight for your sanity. Keep it going. Take baby steps, but don't give up. Don't give up. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to be okay with her. And whatever decision you've made in the past, first of all, let me say, everything you did up until now, that's what you had to do. So give yourself some grace. Use whatever the bad ones were as stepping stone for you to keep climbing to that sanity. but do not sell yourself short because you got yourself here. My understanding is that there were billions and billions of little sperm that you got you here. You are in this hour with us. Let's just take it to the rest of it. Let's just keep going. That's my word.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, and yes, Lord, and yes, you did.
You
I
are
love it.
wonderful. Thank you.
I love it. Dr. Door, listen, this has been good. This has been healing. I hope and watching get what they need. Yes, we'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.
Um,
I was listening
so
to
stick
some of you.
around
Hmm.
and listen, y'all. This has been another Superpower Her podcast where women of power and women with powerful stories testify.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, y'all, it's your girl, Dia Direct. Welcome back to the Superpower Podcast.